So a conversation that I seems to be having a lot is, what is the purpose of education? And there will be those that believe the purpose of education is to fill children with knowledge and get them through their exams. There will be other people who believe that it's about more than that. And whenever I do an activity around values with professionals, the two things that will be on every list that I ever do, the first thing will be safety, and the other thing that will come a bit later on will be happy. And it's that journey from safe to happy that is so important for our young people. But also, if we do it well, the side effect will be a better quality of learning, because when we create safety with our young people, we work with the right part of the brain. And unfortunately, we have this catch-up narrative at the moment, which is just about doing more maths, more English, more maths or English, catch up. But what we're actually doing is we aren't taking the time to make sure that the children feel safe in order for that information to be going in and being retained by those young people. And it's just ending up spilling all over the floor. If we spend a bit more time taking the lid off the thinking brain for the child, then more information is going to go in and more of it's going to be retained, and that's what we've got to look to do. So in terms of the scaffold, I tend to talk about a sequential approach, which is absolutely a mashup of Maslow's hierarchy and Bruce Perry's neurosequential approach. And so the first step on this process is to create emotional safety for our young people. We do lots of stuff for physical safety. What are we doing to create emotional safety? And it'll be things like making that child feel welcome, making that child feel wanted, making that child feel cared for, listening to them, empathy, compassion, all the things that we do with our young people, usually at the start of the day. Certainly in primary schools, this is very much what the start of the day is all about. And you could easily argue that what they're doing in this circumstance is making that child feel loved when they walk in that building. So if we're going to create a basis of emotional safety, that start to the day is going to be absolutely crucial. The meet and greet is vital and a key component of what we're going to do. How we respond to behavioural mistakes is a key and vital component. Now, if we are going to create safety for that young person, then we are well on the way to building trust. And if we start to build that trust with the young person, then we're working our way upwards. And we're certainly on the road to working with that young person. The problem is that has been tested throughout the COVID experience, because there's always going to be that opportunity for that bubble to pop. The reduction in positive touch, the increase in physical distancing, the people wearing face coverings, they've all had an impact for our young people, especially those who are starved of this kind of positive care in their home lives. And when we say to children with the best intentions that we aren't going to leave them, they aren't going to go anywhere, we're going to be there, for whatever reason we can't keep that promise, that's going to cause issues in terms of that relationship. Now, other factors that we've got is children have gone home to aggressive households, they've gone home to neglectful households, they've gone home to households where the care is just really, really inconsistent within that household. And if that's the case, that's going to impact on what they do when they come back to school. So if you might have young people coming in who are angry, you might have young people who come in really defensive, and you've spent ages working to chip away at that child's defensive wall, and then all of a sudden it's twice as high as it ever was. And these things can be really challenging, but probably the most challenging for us as educators is the child that's getting that inconsistent care at home. Sometimes that adult is really emotionally available to them, and then sometimes they just aren't. And the reasons could be a multitude: drink, drugs, mental health. It could be working long hours, poverty, all number of different reasons that might be causing those issues. But it does leave us in a difficult situation, and it does result in children who have to respond to that. And we gain absolutely nothing by blaming the child or blaming the parents, which seems to be certainly what the media would like us to do, and certainly what some educators will do, but it gets us nowhere. Now we need to see the behaviour for what it really is, and that's a response to their experiences. Now, are they responding with anger? Are they responding with defensive shutdown? Or are they thinking, well, actually, I don't know when my adult is going to be emotionally available, so the safest thing for me to do is to have them there all the time. And so if that's the case, that's what you will get from those young people when they come into school. They're expecting an inconsistency from the adults in school. Now, we counter that by being relentlessly consistent, but whilst we are doing that, we are going to get children who are hanging off our trouser leg, constantly seeking reassurance, wanting you close by all the time, wanting to do jobs for everything, wanting to check the work all the time. And these young people, it's a survival strategy that they've developed. Now, so many young people have those two things in place. They have the safety of the school, they have the trust of the adults, but then they are stuck. And they are stuck there because they don't have the ability to self-regulate. And they don't have the ability to self-regulate because for whatever reason, they haven't been taught to self-regulate. Self-regulation is taught through co-regulation. If that hasn't happened, then we've got a gap in that child's learning. Now, should we be annoyed at children for not doing something nobody's ever taught them to do? That, again, is a different conversation. But if that child can't self-regulate, then they are going to sabotage their belonging. So many of the young people that I would have worked with, the paperwork that comes through tells me all their problems are social skills. They can't mix with other children. They get into fights on yard. They won't join in group work. They're very reluctant to engage with others. All of those things, it makes out that you can solve them through social skills work. Let's sit them in a controlled group. Let's talk about facial expressions. Let's talk about body language. And that child in that controlled environment answers all those questions really well. And we think we've cracked it. And then that child walks out of that room, out of that controlled environment. Somebody shouts something. They switch from their thinking, rational brain to an emotional or survival response, and they lash out immediately. We think we've been given lip service and we blame the child, and we're back at square one. The reality is that child doesn't know how to self-regulate, and therefore all that learning we've just done has just been forgotten. Now, if we've got a young person who lashes out because of those reasons, they're going to be unpredictable. Other children don't like unpredictable. We as adults don't like unpredictable. And so if that's the case, that child is walking into a room where other children are wary of them. And if other children are wary of them, then they're walking into that room and they are anticipating rejection. What's the safest thing for you to do if you are anticipating rejection? What's your instinctive response? I will reject them first. So lashing out becomes a cycle that happens. If we want children to belong, we have to teach them to regulate first. If we can stop them from lashing out, that's when we can do that social skills work. Now, if we've got a young person who doesn't have the belonging, then what they are likely to have is a fear of failure, a fear of humiliation, a fear of rejection. And if that's what they've got, then where is the incentive for that child to be that brave and courageous learner we want them to be? Let's learn about this thing you know nothing about. Let's research this thing you've never experienced before. For many of our young people, they aren't going to be in a position to do that. They aren't going to have those foundations of resilience to be able to risk failure, to put themselves out there, to bounce back when they get things wrong. So the sensible option for that child is to avoid. And what's the best method of avoiding? Well, if I get myself sent out of here, nobody will know that I can't do it. I won't get rejected. I won't get humiliated. And so it's a self-preservation mechanism. Now, if we can teach that child to regulate, stop them lashing out, start to do the social skills work with that young person, then we're in a position then where they've got the relationships with the other young people. There is less fear of rejection. There is less fear of humiliation. There is less fear of looking stupid in front of their peer group. This is the point where they are going to put their hand up. They're going to try new things, they're going to answer questions, they're going to bounce back when they get things wrong. This is when we will have a successful and a happier young person. And we all know that if we want good learning, we need children to put themselves out there and be courageous in that learning. So that's what we need to do for our young people, is to give them this scaffold so that they can go forward and be successful.